Kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hairy News. Hope you're well. This is the last pre-record. That means on Monday, live shows are back. Emily and Magenta will take you through the first week, then me and Chewie will join in on the second week. Now, I may well be back next week as well. There was some talk about popping back up in Emily and Magenta's show a few times because I am getting itchy feet and I need to talk about stuff. So yeah, I might pop back in next week, but Emily and Magenta are officially back on Monday, live for you at 9 p.m. How exciting is that? It's been fun doing these best ofs because it also has shown me what kind of content we've been putting out. Quite often, because I try and keep it to between an hour and a half, the show, like the best of show, because that's what we do in our regular show. It's been really hard. Like, so this best of is not just a best of. It's not the 4 best clips of November. I could have played 15 or 20 clips and they all would have been gold. So this is like some of the best of the best of. Yeah, and it's just reminded me how much fun this year's been to produce content. A lot of the subject matter is not fun. You got me right. And so this will be the last one of these, but it's, yeah, I'm looking forward to getting back to it. And it's really encouraged me about what we've been putting out for you guys. And it's explained to me a bit about why we've seen what we've seen happening with the show this year, because yeah, there's been some really good content. It's that's not even a yay us. It's just like a, yeah, there's been some really interesting stuff going on. So on tonight's show, as an example, Moana Maniapoto came and joined us and she talked about the government bringing forward the Treaty Principles Bill. Remember when they did that? They just went, oh, you know, we've got a space in the calendar, so we're just going to bring it forward. There's no real reason we're doing that. Yeah. So it wouldn't happen on the day the Hikui turned up into Parliament, which was the plan. But no, just a coincidence. So we'll have a look at that. We'll start with Moana Maniapoto, I think, because it's a fantastic conversation. Also, the current treaty principles bill, well, the current treaties principles, because there are principles of the treaties now, right? I think TVNZ covered it well one night where they looked at what the current principles say versus what Seymour's version says. We'll have a squiz at that. It's funny, this feels like a bit of a treaty principle show tonight, actually, because we've also got David Seymour being absolutely embarrassed by Jack Tame on Q&A. Chef's kiss to Jack Tame. And finally, just to make sure we're not only Seymour focused, maybe one person in Parliament that's as bad as, if not worse than Seymour, Casey Costello, her Trumpian response to her own officials. Her own officials are basically rebelling because of the decision that she's making, and her Trumpian response to that. Back again live Monday. Very excited to get back into the year. Looking forward to seeing you all when we get back to it. But this is the last best of. Let's get into it with Moana Maniapoto talking to me and Chewie about that Treaty Principles Bill being brought forward. So let us bring into the studio very special guest tonight. Very honoured to have her with us again. It's Moana Maniapoto. Moana, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Kia ora, Moana.
Kia ora, lovely to be with you. And I'm going to pick up from what you said, because you had your nice can that you were going to talk about. Today, this week, I was going to do this whole thing about this.
Yeah.
But it's my new album. But it's
your new album.
Is that your new album? Nice.
Look, it's a vinyl. You know, like one of those round things you put on a record player, but they call them turntables now. But it's just been totally upended because there's these other existential things that are going on. So I'm just tucking my album away. Though it is quite lovely listening to some of the songs to calm the farm.
Yeah, look, I know it's very strange for some people because all they will want for us to do is to get into the conversation around America. We are going to go there. And let's just put this up there as well. There you go. MoanaNZ.com. MoanaNZ.com.
I know that music might feel like it's kind of a bit frivolous at this point, but it does serve to soothe us when we need it, but also this particular album, which has reach into 6 different countries around the world and celebrates language and commonality, is quite timely, I think. So, I sort of think, well, okay, it's probably not the best time to launch it this week, but it actually could be because it's can be quite cathartic.
Yeah. No, look, I think Chewie's the same. I'm in a little bit of shock, not necessarily because there was no chance a certain orange chimpanzee could win, but we said last night that there would be a different result today. But my kind of position was based around what all the people in America were saying. You know, what's his name? Litchfield, the guy who never gets it wrong. Fahrenheit 9/11. Michael Myers. Michael Moore. You know what he was saying. So we were taking our lead from the people who know something, and we were wrong. We were wrong.
Yeah.
And we got one thing right, Moana. We said last night, I bet you by the time we go to air tomorrow night, Donald Trump will have said he's won, whether he has or not. And he did say he's won, but that's because he's won. So it's kind of, we sort of got that right, but not really right. But anyway.
I know. And actually, for our show, we've planned to speak to a number of 2 Indigenous Native American journalists that I spoke to when I was up there in July and August, and a wonderful journalist in Nashville. And we have actually planned to speak to them on the weekend because we thought, well, this could be really close. Who knows? You know, we better save it up for the last minute. But the pressure's come off. But one of the journalists made this amazing quote that I thought resonated with me, which is, he said, American exceptionalism allows us to be stupid and make the worst decision and to shoot ourselves in the foot and have 10 cheeseburgers and elect a convict for president.
Yeah.
I'm just quoting.
Yeah. Well, look, let's talk about New Zealand news first. And then, Moana, if you want to stay for a bit and talk about American stuff, we can do that as well. But we want to talk about the treaty referendum and the hikoi with you while you're here. So let's do that. As I said earlier, TVNZ ignored this. It's on their website, but they ignored it in a story. Stuff gave it approximately 2.5 minutes of their time tonight. So what we might just do is watch the Stuff program, because it's got David Seymour and they're kind of going, well, what do you mean? We were just ready to go, so we brought it forward for no apparent reason. And then we can respond to this.
Well, back home now, and in a surprise move, the government's controversial Treaty Principles Bill will be introduced to Parliament tomorrow, about 2 weeks earlier than expected. Te Pāti Māori claims it's an attempt to get ahead of a hikoi set to arrive at Parliament on November 19th. But ACT leader David Seymour is calling that a conspiracy. Meanwhile, the response to the earlier...
And he would know.
Introduction of the Waitangi Tribunal has released a second scathing report into the bill. Nick Trubridge has the story.
An attempt to avoid more of this, or business as usual. Whatever the answer, the Treaty Principles Bill hits the House tomorrow. Cue political firestorm.
What we've seen is a really disturbing individual, proud of the disruption and the disharmony that he's created in Aotearoa.
Look, I think Te Pāti Māori see conspiracies nearly everywhere.
This was the turnout for a hikoi in May in response to the coalition government's policies impacting Māori. Another one, which organisers predict could involve 50,000 people, is planned in response to the bill. It was due to reach Parliament on November 19, the day after the bill's original introduction date. Seymour says the date's been brought forward because sometimes dates simply change.
Basically because we got all the work we needed to get done, got the policy agreed, got it through Cabinet, had the bill drafted and ready to go.
The Māori Party says whatever the date, the damage is done.
It already has divided a country and it hasn't even hit the House yet. And so we've got a minister and a leader of an ACT party who has a premeditated agenda, which is to allow a 6-month period for a racist agenda to run its course.
The uproar coincides with the release of the Waitangi Tribunal's second report on the bill. It hasn't held back, saying the Crown's process to develop the bill has deliberately excluded any consultation with the Māori treaty partner. It adds, if the bill remained on the statute book for a considerable amount of time or was never repealed, it could mean the end of the treaty. It also found if this bill were to be enacted, it would be the worst, most comprehensive breach of the treaty in modern times.
I think that the Waitangi Tribunal...
I'm sure Richard Prebble will sort all those problems out though, won't he? I'm sure he's getting ready to make sure that we hold firm to the true intention and meaning of the treaty. I think Richard Prebble is the man for the job.
comprehensive breach of the treaty in modern times.
I think that the Waitangi Tribunal's had 50 years to define the principles. They've come up with a set of ideas that are actually highly divisive. We are doing their job for them.
As for the hikoi, expect scenes like this, and then some, organisers say.
I think 50,000 is a conservative if you're thinking about the amount of people that will be involved from top to bottom at all the different stages. The cumulative number, I think, will be well over that.
As the bill's architect prepares for his big day.
There you go. I've been speaking to Eru tonight because I contacted him again and said if he wanted to come on, and he says they're in a hui tonight. Big plan, but we'll definitely try and connect with Eru again through this process. Moana, we'll just throw it to you, mate. What are your thoughts?
Well, I guess one of the key issues I've always questioned about this is backing up the tribunal when it says that David Seymour's bill is a solution to a problem that doesn't exist. And what many of us are asking is, how is anybody being undermined by Te Tiriti? David Seymour has advocated for a national conversation or a debate, but I was chairing something at a Tauranga Book Festival the other weekend, and it was a full room, mainly Pākehā, and I asked the audience to put up their hands if they felt confident and comfortable about debating or even engaging in a national conversation around Te Tiriti. And about 4 people put their hands up, and I knew 2 of them. They were my Māori guests. So you can't have a genuine conversation when the parameters for it have been unilaterally dictated, and about the foundational agreement of this country without any engagement with Māori. So the process of even getting this bill to where it is, the rewriting of it is extremely inflammatory, and it challenges any notion that there's a genuine attempt to have an engaged national conversation.
One of the things that I think is strangest as well is nobody, public-wise, obviously behind the scenes to do, know even what the wording of this bill's going to be until tomorrow. The Herald talked about that today, and they did an article on it. Treaty Principles Bill wording to be revealed tomorrow amid fierce criticism. So at the moment, I mean, Moana, we agree with you about consultation and involving Māori in the conversation, but the conversation that they're talking about, no one even knows what the parameters are yet, because no one's seen the wording yet until it gets put before the House tomorrow.
Well, we've had conversations with David Seymour. I've interviewed him. There have been countless interviews. There have been articles on their website which indicate what the wording will be like, and it basically writes Māori out of the equation. Yeah. It takes out, it excludes the indigeneity, the tangata whenua status of Māori. So that is a serious rewrite, and the tribunal has been quite clear that the bill is based on a flawless policy rationale. Like I say, what is the problem that we're trying to solve here? Has been generous in saying it was novel in its treaty interpretations, fashioned on a disingenuous historical narrative, and distorted the text of Te Tiriti or Waitangi. So I had people on my show like Matthew Hooton and Chris Vanessa, and you wouldn't call them raging lefties. Matthew described the rewrite as we know it, and we have no reason to believe it won't be much different from that, as highly radical. Not conservative, but highly radical, both in the process that's been adopted to get the bill to where it is and the way that Māori have been erased from the equation in the proposed text.
We were watching Christopher Luxon. He was in a couple of pieces on Christopher Luxon this week when he was on 30 with Guy and Espino. And Guy on said to him, yeah, but you agree this is divisive, eh? And he goes, yep. It's like he was so keen to get power at any means, by any means. He's opened the door for this kind of conversation. I'm air quotes around the conversation. to happen. He knows it's divisive. I actually now don't think it'll go past the first reading. For a while, I was like, no, I don't think it will. What do you think about what? And I'm talking about Luxon in particular. He's the Prime Minister. He's opened the door for this. He owns this. What he's done, letting this get put before the House and be debated for 6 months, and what that's going to do to society, which we need to remember goes back to him, not just Seymour, but him as well.
Yeah, like 6 months. 6 months of airtime, focus on this particular bill, which is extremely flawed, is going to turn a proposed debate around the treaty into a law and order issue. It's going to become really toxic. And given the Prime Minister has confirmed he won't be in the country during the first reading of the Treaty Principles Bill, which, I mean, it's easy to assume, it's easy for all New Zealanders to assume that the coalition agreement takes precedence over the founding document of this country, and that is very telling.
That's rough, mate. Saying it like that, that's fucking rough. Chewie, why don't you jump in, brother?
Oh, there's so much I can say here. I think moving this up to this week for the absolutely transparent reasons that they've done it, that it'll be lost in the wash of the US elections, and then they want to get it to the debate chamber before the Hikoi even leaves, is just some devious trash tier politics, and everybody behind it should be ashamed of it. I think we've got to keep in mind that David Seymour has one thing in mind. He knows he's going to lose this, but he is going to tie up so much of our national debate in it. He's going to keep it in the news cycle for as long as he can, and his end game is a public referendum, which will be one of the most horrifically divisive things that this country has ever seen. I think he's dead set on flushing 50 years worth of slow, inching, hard fought for progress in this country down the toilet based on his debate club understanding of New Zealand history. I think we got people in the chat talking about the training that they had and the knowledge that they had through their jobs of learning about treaty breaches, and we were talking about hundreds of years of straight up ignoring the treaty and ignoring Māori. As soon as it was signed and people could come in, that was mission accomplished as far as Europeans were involved in. And I think the discussion has shifted, is that there is a significant portion of this country that realizes that the treaty doesn't oppress anyone, that it is unique in the world, and we need to stand for it. I think there's a lot of people that are ignorant around treaty issues and don't have the training and don't have the understanding and haven't searched out the knowledge to form a coherent opinion on this, apart from sounds like Māori are being greedy.
Yeah,
that's what David Seymour is counting on.
Yeah. So I always go back to that tribunal thing, is what is the problem that they're trying to solve? So you know, you see say the Te Aka Whai order, MAPAS up at Auckland University, that's the Māori Pacific medical program, to try and get more Māori into as doctors, a treaty clause within corrections that will prod corrections to have some culturally relevant sort of programs for people in prison, so they can have for reintegration and rehabilitation, so that there's a strategy in place. And none of these are bulletproof, but these are just triggers. That's what these principles do. But you know, what's changed? Are there suddenly, because of these strategies that are embodied in He Oranga Tamariki and different things, are there suddenly way more Pākehā that have been disproportionately imprisoned? Are there suddenly way more Pākehā whose health needs are not being met? I mean, do you guys know? I haven't seen any indication of that.
I want I want a lot of things in this country to be have the treaty more centric in them. And it is at times for quite selfish reasons. I like the idea of the majority of our rivers being swimmable. And certainly doing things the way that we've been doing has not got that. So
Yeah.
You know, one of my hopes is that when we get past this, and we start considering things, resource management through a te tiriti lens, is that we will get better outcomes. Because as we've said on the show many, many, many times, what is good for Māori is good for all of us, because we live in the same country. And
Yes.
it baffles me when I look at someone like David Seymour and say, can you not see this? And I think he can. I think he wants to ignore it.
Well, I think there are ideological
things.
Yeah, there's ideological things at play, which is kind of ironic given that's been the accusation that's been thrown at other people who are treaty proponents, you know, for over the years. But if I think about, okay, we want to have a national conversation, we want to have a debate about the te tiri, that's all good. Some of us have been having that forever. Like, I remember being at Waitangi in 1990 when Bishop Verco, Whakahuihui Verco, and a whole bunch of us were sort of booing. The Queen was there. And, you know, we're like, oh, no, the church is going to just, you know, roll over. And he got up there and he said, we don't need the principles. We have te tiriti. And everybody stopped booing and going, yeah. You know, and there have been strategies like Mātiki Mai and conversations around He Puapua. There have been conversations in the justice space that have been going on for a long time. I mean, really challenging ones. And I've been a part of some of those, and they have been challenging. You've had to think about, okay, if te tiriti isn't, if we bring it alive, how do we make sure that the systems and institutions we put into place, the protocols and mechanisms, are good for everybody, not just for that particular iwi, but for Māori, but also for Pākehā, for immigrant culture. So there's been an awful lot of thinking and debate that's been going on way before we got to this election. And none of that has been taken into account in the shaping of this particular bill.
What do you think Waitangi Day next year is going to be like, Moana?
Ooh.
Well, I used to hold an event here in Muriwai Beach called Every Day is Waitangi Day, and everywhere. And I think it'll be a continuation of a movement, and I'd like to think that it's a movement that is New Zealand tiriti centric. I'd like to think when I've interviewed people this year, and I've met so many wonderful people this year, at the tauranga thing, you know, these Pākehā kuia coming up to me and going, I'll debate the treaty. I said, really? They go, yeah, I'm on the right side. I'm like, oh, gee, neat, all right. You know, Asians for Tino Rangatiratanga, the old Project Waitangi that's morphed into kind of tangata tiriti. There's so many awesome educators out there, people who work in justice, people who work in health. I think there's a movement that's going to start. I'd like to think that it's one that's going to build and be very clear that, you know, this is a tiriti-focused Aotearoa is something magical. It really is. It's something special. It's something that we don't have. When I talk to my friends up in States, bless them, oh my God, they've got so many treaties in Canada and the States, and it's all very confusing and they're very marginalised. People look at us and go, you've got one treaty. And I'm going, yeah, and it's hard yakka with that one. There is so much potential there. And we know that the principles that have been developed over the years don't address the elephant in the room, which is around sovereignty. But there are principles that have been developed that are based on te tiriti, that allow for a mana enhancing, as Moana Jackson would say, a mana enhancing relationship that's good for everybody. And I'd like to think that we will get to that space. And that's a constitutional, we have a unique constitutional opportunity and relationship here. It's not based on race, despite what people say. It's not based on Māori and Pākehā.
Yep.
It's based on between rangatira of Papua and Iwi nations and Hobson on behalf of the Crown. So, we've got to get that kind of thing right.
Yeah, it's two signatories. It's based on the two signatories.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, if my neighbor who is from Japan signs a mortgage with the bank, that's not an agreement based on race. It's two people, or it's a bank and it's a Japanese family who are signing up for a mortgage. It doesn't matter that one of them happens to be a complete Japanese family, Japanese New Zealanders. It's not. We never think about that being based on race.
No, it's not about ethnicity. It's not about the ethnicity. The original agreement was between two nations. And there's nothing to fear about that. We can be. I always just think that we can be. We've got the opportunity, because when you look at the states, even though we don't want to, it's so complex. It's so big. There's so many people. They've got a really stuffed system. We have got such an opportunity here in Aotearoa where we're a small population, where everybody almost knows everybody, where we've got these strong relationships. We've got this treaty which is built on values, which provides a mechanism for us to move forward. The potential is so exciting that we could be the example for everybody else.
I'm interested in one aspect of the treaty. We all saw Lydia Thorpe 2 weeks ago, 2.5, 3 weeks ago, challenging King Charles about what the Crown has done to the Indigenous people of Australia. And as she was being herded out of the room, she was crying out, "We want a treaty. We want a treaty." Is she just referencing what New Zealand has? Is that the example of a treaty that Indigenous people would want? Because when I, as a non-Māori, talk about it, I always have this caveat where I go, it's so much better than Australia. Not that it's good in New Zealand. We haven't worked it out in New Zealand, but so how do we square that circle? Like, is Lydia Thorpe calling out for what Māori have, and then how do we work out what Māori have to be what Māori should have?
Well, Well, we did a story on the Voice to Parliament, and really at the end of the day, there are no treaties over there. They were seeking to set up, if you want to be blunt, a kind of an advisory body to Parliament that would provide Indigenous Australians with a voice, and they would look at it. Like, I interviewed Attorney General for South Australia or something, and he's like, we want what you guys are going. And I'm like, well, the practical reality is we have this thing, but the implementation of it, the mechanisms around it, don't bring it to life. So we are in a kind of advisory position, and that's the problem, the essential problem with the principles. The principles which have been identified by the court and in part by the tribunal, though that's another deeper discussion, is about it embeds the Crown's role or authority to protect, to enable partnership and participation of Māori. Mm-hmm. Those are not necessarily, they are not a reflection of the actual articles, which go deeper, which talk about sovereignty and talk about power sharing. So my conversations with Indigenous Australians is, so we have Te Tiriti, and that is a constitutional arrangement which is mana enhancing between two separate nations, and allows the Crown to have authority over one, and blah, 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 blah. It's different from, that is not what we have now, as represented by the principles. But that's no excuse for somebody to say, well, even those principles, which are meant to ensure active protection, partnership, and whatever, are too much. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I've got one more question, kind of unrelated. So, Chewie, have you got anything else you want to ask of Moana at the moment, or points you want to make?
No, not at this stage.
Every time we talk to you, Moana, I think it's been a couple of times now, and you're so wise, and you have such good perspectives, and it feels like you can bring something more to this nation through what you're doing. Have you ever thought about politics? Like, have you ever thought about it? Or I'm sure you've been approached, but have you ever thought about it?
I have thought about it, and I suppose one of the considerations, I mean, I'm a little bit lippy, and I like to, I don't know if I could sit in the back, you know, but also, you know, when I was approached, my daughter was young and it's just not a priority. But I do respect a lot of people that go into Parliament.
Mm-hmm.
It is a hugely, and it's probably one of the things that's put me off, to be honest, is that it is hugely draining. That's for the people that go on with a kaupapa. And I know some people that go on, they want to make a difference, and they stay up all night, they're tortured, you know, and then there are others that just are in there for an ego or coasting along. So, you know, it is a really, really big decision to be able to do that sort of a thing. And yeah.
All right. Hey, we're going to go on now and talk about some other news stories that happened today. I'm not entirely sure about what those are going to be. Do you want to offer a thought or opinion or anything on the US just before we say goodbye?
Well, I was messaging with some of my friends in the States who are in different parts, who are hosting election programs, or journalists who are Indigenous, or some who are in New York and that, and asking how they felt. And at the start of the day, or yesterday, they sort of felt kind of optimistic, though I know one friend came back and he said, no matter what the outcome is going to be, it's going to be very dire because the country is so polarized. He said that even if Kamala Harris won, there would be, you know, expected violence from a sort of a right leaning, you know, constituency, and that if Trump wins, there will be more embedding in terms of authoritarianism and that kind of stuff. It's very interesting that both that Democratic and Republican voters have all chosen on the basis of their concern around democracy. Like the Republicans, that's their big driving factor why they voted for Trump, was concern. The people I spoke to in Oklahoma City, in Port Husker, we need to vote President Trump back in to reinstate democracy, you know? And then the Democrats that I spoke to in New York or in Port Husker, oh my God, we've got to keep them out because of democracy. Far out.
You're far outside the end there. I think that's the audible version of what everybody's feeling right now. So we won't put you through. I'm gonna tell a little story. Unfortunately, Moana, I don't want to embarrass you too much, but Chewie, Moana, when I messaged Moana today and said, "Do you want to come on?" What did you say? I'm a couple of wines deep. I don't know how long I'll last. So Chewie's got the Jack Daniels. I've got the whiskey, and maybe we'll see you at Waitangi next year, Moana.
My God, did you watch his speech though, Trump?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just terrible. Hey, tell people where they can get the actual vinyl that you've got out today or out this week.
Yes, the vinyl, yes. It was funny because I was watching TV1 News and then I kind of was cruising through and 7 Sharp was on and then I popped up. They did a lovely story on me. So you can get these from, I don't know, record shops, Marbeck's and places like that.
Do they still
exist?
Nice, eh? Does a record store still exist? Is there a record store in Dunedin, Chewie?
Yeah, Relics Records. They're really good.
All right.
That's what I asked when they said, do you want to put a record out? I said, who has one of those turntable things? And my son.
I do. I have 600 records. Yes, I am a collector. I'm an obsessive.
My son.
I like the expense and the inconvenience of it. It's really nice.
They're beautiful, eh? Yeah. And we have one in our office. My son got it. And he interviewed John Rawls many years ago. John Rawls gave him his entire record collection. So I think that's why he ended up with his record. So I put the record on to have a listen to it because I didn't have a turntable. And then it got to, so there's 6 songs and it got to the third one. And I thought, oh my God, we've frickin' stuffed it up because it's big. It's just silence. Oh, hell. And my son says, Mum, you got to turn it over.
Very cool. And for all the fantastic advice and words you've shared tonight, I think the most important thanks comes from Sarah, who wants you to know that she loves your nails. So there you go. That's the summary of us pouring our hearts out, and that is we love your nails. So there you go.
Thank you. Lovely to talk to you guys.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate you
I
giving us some time.
I needed to hear some perky cordial tonight.
Well, we're about to go into the depressing part of the show, so we'll let you go.
Okay, I'm out of here. Okay.
All right, Moana. Thanks very much.
Okay.
See you, mate. Welcome back, team. Hope you're enjoying the best of. Reminder, we're back here again live from Monday of next week. Looking forward to getting back to it. Really important heads up about the store at the moment. A couple of things to know. It is open, bhnshop.nz, bhnshop.nz. It is open, but what we're probably going to do is we're probably going to take down perhaps the Chewies, the Nikki No Boats, and the BHNs in the lead up to Waitangi Day for a couple of reasons. One is I run the store. I pretty much, either I or one of my family members pretty much packs up everything. We print all the shirts, we fold them, we take them to the post shop, and I'm going away for 2 weeks on honeymoon. So I will be out of here by about the 25th of January. We're talking about. Now that means I can't really leave the store open for others to monitor because they don't have the access. So what it means is the buffer in particular, I'm thinking that people are going to want for Waitangi Day. And if you do want a buffer, there are limited numbers there. As you can see, the green, is that green? No, that's rust. There are some green 3XLs left, but the rust 3XLs have all gone. There's the rust one there, of course, which I think is my favorite. Although I might make myself a green one. I haven't got one yet. Which means basically kind of after the 25th of January, you may not be able to get buffer gear. And I'm guessing buffer gear for Waitangi Day could be quite important for some people, as about the idea that we're talking about what it is. Same to be said for the hoodies. You can see, look, pinks have all gone. Maroons, I think there might only be one of, and it's in 3XL. There are greens though, or maybe there's only green larges as well. So the numbers are limited, and the store's likely coming down once I go on honeymoon because we won't be able to service the store. So what I'm saying is you need to get in now. You need to get in now and get your gear if you want. The other items are much of the same. Everything's still available as I record this, but at some stage before the 25th, we'll be taking some of these down and putting them back up again once I get back from honeymoon, but that'll be about it. So long-winded, I'm sorry. And it's a terrible way to do a clip that's going to play 4 times this week or 5 times this week because you'll remember it clearly. But bhnshop.nz, if you want to get some merch, and even though we're in pre-record mode, I'm still in Dunedin, we're still here, and we will still send out gear. So if you want it, especially the buffer gear for Waitangi Day, then order it today. bhnshop.nz. I'm not sure I've met this guy before. Do you know who this is? I haven't seen him around. He's a new face, a new young face in politics.
He looks real familiar to me.
There's someone in Canada who looks a bit like this. Is he Canadian?
Are you talking about this stunning hunky man?
Oh, you are a sex god.
Look at that. Does he look like Beavis?
Yeah, a little bit, eh?
A little bit. Libertarian.
All right, let's go. Can't have too many of the funnies tonight, Chewie, because we've got a lot of video to get through. David Seymour is forever talking about dividing by ethnicity, how it's never worked anywhere in the world. One of the things we often say about that is we go, affirmative action? Could we say affirmative action kind of worked? So, maybe there's some, but he says it as a fact, right? And no one ever pushes back until old mate Jack Tame.
That's the division it's led us to.
So you've said, I think, that dividing people by race and ethnicity and granting them different sets of rights or legal rights has never worked anywhere.
Yep.
What about Sweden?
Silence.
What about Sweden?
Well, the Sami reindeer people have indigenous rights to herd reindeer. They have land rights to Sami parliament. All of that's enshrined in law. Sweden's not yet a failed state.
Well, that may well be true.
Yeah, this is really important to cut in straight away. He says is a failed state. He doesn't say has some issues in the state to work about. Now, a failed state is not a country that's got, 3% discussion difference. A failed state is like a crashing economy, cannot function. Very careful to watch the trick here. He says it's a failed state. Then when he gets pushed back on, he goes, well, I don't think it's good for everybody. So he's saying different things, and it's really good that Jack called him out on it. Parliament, all of that's enshrined in law. Sweden's not yet a failed state.
Well, that may well be true, but I think...
What about Canada? Silence.
Well, again...
And the US, they have Indigenous people have rights enshrined in law. Same with Aboriginal Australians. These aren't failed states.
Well, if you want to talk about Australia, Canada and the United States...
No, I mean, that phrase you've used a few times now, that dividing people by race and ethnicity, granting them different sets of legal rights, has never worked anywhere. I mean, there are 4 countries where it's worked.
Well, actually, I don't believe it has worked. If you want to talk about any of those countries, let's take Canada, for example, one that I happen to know a little bit about the background.
I never knew he'd been to Canada. Did you know he'd been to Canada, Chewie? I was never aware of that.
Don't make me get that picture back up.
Let's take Canada, for example, one that I happen to know a little bit about the background. The reason that people believe New Zealand has the best race relations in the world is because we've never done or never dreamed of doing what Canada's done, which is effectively put 1 million people of First Nations ancestry under INAC, or Indian and Northern Affairs Canada, and say you live on a reserve.
Yeah. So what we're doing is working. That's the interview then.
Yeah.
Put it back in the bag. We're the envy of the world for race relations because of what we've been doing for the last 50 years.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. I think I tweeted something very similar today, Chewie, and I used that thing about failed state. It's like, but New Zealand's not. So, hang on. The way we're doing it now, we haven't fallen over. We haven't, so it's working here. But you say it doesn't. Yeah. Anyway, we'll keep going. Give them some grace.
Under INAC, or Indian and Northern Affairs Canada, and say you live on a reserve, it's governed by a band council, all of your social services are funded through one government department, and the level of poverty, dysfunction, abuse that occurs on those reserves is absolutely third world. So, the idea...
Third world. This doesn't work third world. He's using an example, but we also spoke about Sweden, third world, or world leading. New Zealand, third world?
The thing is, what Jack has said here is not that all of those countries that were listed are doing a fantastic job, and that this is the pathway of how to treat your Indigenous people. North America clearly has problems. Canada is an absolute shit show for how they treat their Indigenous people, and they're only starting now to address that. The Sami people had to fight for everything that they've got in Finland and Sweden. So Jack isn't saying here's a list of countries that do it better.
No.
The argument that David Seymour is saying is that it's never worked anywhere ever.
And it causes the state to fail. It causes the state to fail, which clearly it's not.
None of that is true. And then in the same conversation, he says we're the envy of the world for our race relations. And it just made me have a brain hemorrhage where I go, yes, because we've got the treaty, Te Tiriti, and we've got the Waitangi Tribunal, and we've had 50 years of learned discussion about what this document means to us. That's why we're the envy of the world. No one has these things.
Yep. All right. Let's keep going.
That somehow an American or Australian or Canadian view. But my thing is it doesn't work. The reason that people admire...
Whilst giving examples of it working.
New Zealand is that compared to any of those other 3 Anglo countries, we have taken the view that all New Zealanders have equal rights. That's actually what our treaty says. In the last 50 years, we've started to go down a track that, in my view, makes us much more like Australia, Canada and the United States, where people who are of First Nations or Indigenous or Aboriginal heritage are told, no, you're in a separate basket from other citizens.
They're hardly failed states, though, are they? So So why should Parliament?
Just a second though. The question is for the people who are affected by those policies.
Well, I think many Māori would argue that actually Māori haven't benefited from the status quo in New Zealand right now. Māori are overrepresented in all the bad things, underrepresented in all the good stats in New Zealand.
Yeah, but
very quickly
no, you're missing the point here. The point is there are two basic ways to do this. One is to have division, a different set of rights, different sovereignty.
The division that this bill is causing. He says division like if people do separate things in separate areas. If people over 65 can get a pension and people under 65 can't. You know, if the Catholic Church can only hire male priests, no females, discrimination based on sex, that kind of division's okay. He's not challenging that kind of division. So you always got to bring it back to why is he so focused on these race issues when he's happy to see discrimination in other areas of life as well.
He will always mention New Zealand as being divided, like this is the most divided that we've ever been. And then he introduced this bill, and that was shown to be a lie as well.
Yeah.
So if his concern is how divided this country is, why are you dividing it more?
Yeah, and or like you've just said very cleverly, Chewie, when you've looked for an expression of division, say the hikoi, what you saw was unity. I mean, it's even because if it was division, you would have seen a counter protest. Was there one? No. Couple of odd individuals here and there. So that would be division. Like you think about, they always talk about 81 Springbok Tour. There was a protest and there was a counter protest. There was division. They're saying there's division, but we're not seeing division. We might be hearing division if we listen to fucking talkback radio or read the, as you always say, Chewie, what is it, the New Zealand Herald comment section. But when you get the chance to put the rubber where the road is, literally on the road walking, there seems to be complete unity in the way that this country despises in general what they're doing. We'll just get to the end of this. It's got like 30 seconds.
Live under a different jurisdiction in a different location. That is the Australian, Canadian and American model. It's been a disaster. Are there problems in New Zealand? Yes. But our model of saying we have...
Sorry. Just gonna say, he keeps saying these big words. It's been a disaster. It hasn't worked, but he's giving no examples. Remember, is America a failed state? Well, actually, Trump, maybe that's the one, we'll give him that one, but not for the reasons he thinks. Sweden, failed state, no. You know, and he goes, but that's the problem, that's the division. And then he just moves on. Now, Jack does very well through this, but it's a typical gish gallop. Everyone knows what a gish gallop is, where you give out as many facts and words and stuff as possible that the person interviewing you can only come back to one. So the other 8 things you say they have to leave alone, or it would be a 19-hour video. So he's very good at saying big word, big word, big word, big word, big word, big concept, scary word, scary word, scary word, and Jack gets to come back at one of them. And so those other 19 things get left there for people to understand that. And all the writers go, oh gosh, didn't he take him apart? He didn't answer any of those other things he said. Yeah, because we don't have a spare 3 days. It's not, was it Nixon who did like a 48-hour interview? Something like that? We don't have the time for that. Sorry, Joe. I'm going to shut up. We'll get to the end of this.
One standard of citizenship, we're all human rights, you all have equal rights. That is vastly superior to what they've done. My argument is the last 50 years we've become more like, not very far, but we've started to go in the direction of division. So and I think we need to go back to New Zealand's true approach, which is equal rights for all.
So why should...
There you go. So that's clip number 1. Chewie, I'll give you the last word on that, sir.
No, I'm not going to say anything because we've got a lot to get through, as you said.
Look at you. Holy moly, who is this? Yep. This orange man, orange shirt. Oh, orange man. We should see one of those Trump. He'd look good in that orange. Okay, I love this bit, and I know my tongue's in my cheek when I say this, but I think Jack Tame may have been listening to us, Chewie, because he has a fantastic conversation here, which is what we've been talking about this for 18 months, that you could look and can look at the treaty as a contract. This is a libertarian. Do you believe in the sanctity of contracts? That's what he's saying, and this is great, and there is no comeback or no answer for it.
Do you believe in the sanctity of contract?
Yes, I do, but I also believe that contracts need to be interpreted, especially over 184 years, and you've got to balance that against the rights of people.
Shung, see that? He went from do you believe in the sanctity of contracts to talking about the treaty. No, I don't have to have my contract with my bank interpreted because I know what it says. It's there. And if I don't know, I could probably go to my accountant who would be an expert who could tell me, right? But Contracts don't have to be interpreted. You want to interpret this contract. That's what it is.
To be a thinking and valuing being with equal dignity and equal respect afforded to them in our constitutional arrangements.
But you would agree, if not a partnership between races, you would agree, I think, that the treaty is a binding agreement between iwi hapu and the Crown, right? So how would it be just for one party to an agreement to unilaterally define the meaning of that agreement without the other party's consent?
Well, that's exactly what's been happening over the past 50 years when the courts and the Waitangi...
Nope.
It's just lie after lie after lie.
The courts, the Crown and Māori have all been participants in this conversation. It hasn't been Māori going, we'll just do what we want and ignore the Crown. Nope. It hasn't been happening for 50 years, you fucking liar.
Well, that's exactly what's been happening over the past 50 years when the courts and the Waitangi Tribunal have a very narrow range of...
Respectfully, the courts aren't the Crown, though, are they?
Well, that may be true.
So the courts aren't actually one of those parties that signed the agreement. The Crown signed the agreement with iwi and hapu. Those are the two separate parties to the agreement.
This is a beautiful point, Chewie. You've signed a mortgage and your bank has signed a mortgage. If there is conflict there, you go to an arbitrator who is an independent body. You've signed a contract with your workplace. The workplace has signed it. You have signed it. If there's disagreement with that, you go to a third party, which is an arbitrator. You don't allow your workplace to dictate what it says. This is beautiful. David Seymour is saying one of the signatories of this contract is now going to dictate what it says. That's not how you resolve a contract. It's not how you resolve a contract. You get a third party to arbitrate between you. And the third party in New Zealand is, and always has been, the fucking courts. It's a really good point, and it's a bit of a spin on this today that I think we should all remember.
So the courts are the closest thing we actually have to a neutral arbiter. I mean, it is the responsibility of the courts to resolve conflicts or divisions between the Crown and other parties, which is exactly what they've been doing.
Nonetheless, what they've come up with is a version of the treaty that is completely unworkable with a...
Nonetheless means that might be true, but that's what nonetheless means. And then what he's saying is, nonetheless, that is unhelpful to my narrative. That's what he's just said. In a liberal democratic state. I mean, we've just seen that. The best examples you can come up with are American, Canadian, and Australian
Sweden,
So,
reserves. So, I mean, the examples you came up with are so disastrous.
Back to that point, though. No, so I mean, I think this is a critical part of this, right? Why should the Parliament, which is the Crown, in your case you are a Minister of the Crown, why should a party that has a direct conflict of interest when it comes to the Treaty of Waitangi be the one to ultimately interpret what the treaty means without the consent of the other party?
Well, it's actually the Parliament on behalf of the people of New Zealand. And the problem with
You're a Minister of the Crown, though, right? So you are a concerned party, as opposed to the courts and the Waitangi Tribunal, which are... neutral third party.
If you want to get into this three branches of government thing, sure, I'm the executive, and as a minister I introduce the bill to Parliament. It's the Parliament, which is the elected legislature of New Zealand, that is deciding whether or not it goes forward. Now,
you as a Minister of the Crown define these principles. The Crown is a concerned party when it comes to the Treaty of Waitangi, which is why, in the eyes of some...
Go, Chewie.
He fundamentally doesn't understand this, clearly. Like, he doesn't see that there's a conflict of interest. He goes up to this point and just misses it every time.
But respectfully, or he absolutely does, and he's aware of the laziness of media and of people to do the work. I mean, I don't believe that Trump is ignorant to all those things that he says are wrong. I believe there's an element of it that he can say it loudly and confidently, and he knows people will believe it. So you might be right, but I think the equal and opposite, that he knows exactly what he's freaking doing, might be right as well.
Yeah.
Fair?
The other aspect of this is he's talking about, I'm just a simple representative of the people of New Zealand, as we all are in Parliament. Cool. This isn't representative of a large portion of the country. They didn't ask for this. You could go, all right, everybody that voted for ACT wanted this. It's 8%. Like, it is not representative. It is not a representative piece of legislation. And unfortunately, Jack falls for this trap later on as well, of regurgitating the Curia poll that said more people in New Zealand were in support of this legislation than against it. Now, there are huge problems with Curio polls' accuracy and integrity, and it kind of shocked me that he regurgitated that particular poll. So, you know, or everything that David says as a surety, like most of the country is for this. It's not backed up.
Yeah,
it's not backed up. And even if it was true, which it is not, or at the very least is debatable, it is also Parliament's role to go, this is a bad piece of law. This is bad for the integrity of this country. Like if everybody just answered a poll that said, free guns for everyone, you know,
no more tax.
Parliament
no more tax.
Go, oh, well, no more tax. No tax, and yes, guns. You know, Parliament would be quite within their rights, I think, to go, well, I don't know about that.
Well, I think, Chewie, and we'll keep going in a sec, but I think that what you've said several times, giving you credit for it, is you do not decide issues of, what do we say, race?
Race relations.
Race relations by referendum. That's what it is. Because sometimes the correct thing to do, so this is why the numbers don't really matter, sometimes the correct thing to do is the less popular thing to do. Sometimes the correct thing to do is what you've committed to, and now it's become unpopular with some, you still have to do it. Sometimes the best thing to do is when your representatives previously to you have signed a fucking contract that say you're going to do it, you know? So let's keep going, yeah?
Having courts be the arbiter of this might be more appropriate. I mean, if you think about other contracts, right? If it was like, you know, I appreciate it's different, but a car loan or a mortgage or a custody agreement.
I think Jack's been watching. Oh, look at that. Pause down on me.
I appreciate it's different, but a car loan or a mortgage or a custody agreement, it would be totally unjust for one party to unilaterally decide what that agreement means.
Well, first of all, often those contracts are actually made in the context of the laws of the country at the time. But the second point I make...
Not what Jack said, by the way. Jack just said if you're getting a car loan, it's not okay for the person giving the loan to then change that's what he said, and Seymour hasn't answered it and won't answer it.
Much more important that actually these treaty principles only exist because Parliament said they exist. It's the treaty principle.
Like any law in this country that we've ever had. Are we now saying we can change everything because they're not really such a big deal? You know, only Parliament set the speed limit, Chewie. We just change it. I mean, we should fight it and then change it because that means nothing. It's like such a stupid, unintelligent argument.
That we're talking about defining. So
they exist. They exist because the courts said they exist, and then Parliament chose to interpret the court's decision and put that into legislation.
And subsequent to that...
So the courts, which were the independent, neutral third party in this, or as close as we can get to a neutral third party, they were the ones who ultimately defined those treaty principles. The Parliament then decided to take that decision from the courts and put it into legislation.
And subsequent to that, the Parliament put them into legislation and across a whole lot of other statutes, which has affected the life and the rights that people have in this country every day. So you can make the argument all day about contracts and whether the courts are the right arbiter. But what I come back to is the question of whether or not it delivers a constitutional setting that gives equal rights, respect and dignity to each human being in this country. And what they've done clearly hasn't. And when the best example you can come up with of it working anywhere else in the world is, you know, Canadian reserves.
I mean, that's your interpretation of the treaty, and we're going to get to that in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, no, that's the end of that clip. Shall we go for it?
Yeah. That's not what Jack said. Like you heard him say that. The only example you can bring that up is the Canadian reservations. Absolutely misrepresented what Jack said there.
By many of those
Sorry.
You know, right from the start, Jack was using that as a pushback against the repeated line that David has used in every interview, every single interview about this bill. He has parroted the line that no country that has made division based on ethnicity or ancestry, it's never worked anywhere.
Yeah. And he says it, he goes, show me where it's worked. He goes, show me where it's worked. Well, Jack's just showing you. Every time we talk about it, the one thing we often say is, sorry, the name's just jumped out of my head. Race relations in America, affirmative action seems to have worked. You're following that. So, but Chewie, this is the thing. He says it quickly. He says it confidently. He says 20 other things beside it. And he says enough to slip through and then give his minions on social media the ability to think they can push back. And then the people they're pushing back against don't have the details to push back. So it's just like a layer of shit that sits on top of us all the time, and you can't quite press through, or enough people can't quite get through it, that it's just always there. And because there's enough of it, there's enough words, there's enough ideas, there's enough opinions, they can never actually break through the counterspin to it, sorry for the pun, to actually show the truth. There's that old adage about how lies will go around the world before truth gets its pants on. This is basically
and
it.
Look, I think what David's doing is working. It is creating a bit of confusion. Like, yes, he's talking to his faithful that will just parrot these lines. Like I have literally been arguing on YouTube with someone for a week, where they're going, point out in David's bill where it's racist with quotation marks, which no, and it's like it's not. There's nothing in the words that is objectively racist, but its intention is. The effect on it will be racist, and these sort of things. But then the other thing that I've seen, and I love this, I saw a great example of it in the New Zealand subreddit today, where someone said, "I'm very confused on this. Can someone please explain to me? I don't get it. All of this stuff sounds great. Equality sounds like something that we should strive for, right? So why are people angry?" And what I saw in that thread was a whole bunch of people take this person at face value and take time and spell out exactly what's going on. And this is what we talk about, is it's really easy to hit that. This is racist and I'm angry and I don't have to explain it why. We're not going to bring people with us if we do that. As frustrating as it is, you spend all of the time, you're either talking to people that agree with you or you're yelling at people that aren't. You need to think about the people that are stuck in the middle. We need to bring them with us, with facts, with reason. And David doesn't want to do that.
Yeah.
David wants to muddy the waters because that's where he gets his pull from.
Let's go on to the third of 4 clips, and they're talking about Article 2. And it's a very, very, again, Jack does very well here, trying to get David. I actually felt that David was really weak. Like, I mean, David is a pretty good debater, even if it is high school debate. But Jack here is going to challenge him on, what do you think? And he keeps coming back to what it should be. And he goes, no, not should. What do you think? He comes across as very weak in this argument. Like it's never been pushed back on him before. And he's just having to think of these things now. So they talk about Article 2 here.
The point of your opponents, though, is that nowhere in the treaty does it actually guarantee everyone that level of tino rangatiratanga, that it specifically includes a carve-out for iwi and hapu.
Well, it said it would give tiro rangatiratanga
or the signatories to the treaty.
All the people of New Tirani, all the people in New Zealand. Now, of course, most people say, oh, well, clearly that meant just the chiefs that were there in 1840.
Right. So I think it means all people.
I think it should mean all the people of New Zealand.
You think it should mean? You think it should mean? But do you think that's what it meant?
Well, the courts like to tell you.
No, what do you think?
Well,
I think it should mean.
But it should mean all the people.
My question is, what do you think it actually meant?
Well, I think it should mean all the people.
Sorry,
yeah.
I'm not asking what you think it should mean. I'm asking what you think it meant.
Well, I suspect, I don't know. Nobody knows for sure. The courts have told us that it meant only Māori. The courts have told us that we now live in a country.
Remember from earlier, the courts, that arbitrator who's more neutral than either Māori or the Crown, those people, the ones who are in the middle?
Is divided by ancestry into 2 collectives.
Okay, so
that doesn't work. So here's what it should
be.
So
the line you quoted Te Tiriti there. So ko te kuini o ngā arane ka whakarite ka whakaai ki ngā rangatira ki ngā hapu ki ngā tangata katoa o New Tirani, New Zealand, right? Ngā tangata katoa, and you've interpreted that as meaning all New Zealand.
All the people of New Zealand, yes.
But I mean, you're giving us an English translation of a Māori text there, but of course we don't need the English translation of...
Sorry. This is very good.
Can I just make a quick point here?
Yeah.
Just of something that was quite common at the time. The people of New Zealand, when the colonizers were referring to them, were Māori.
Yeah.
Everybody else was English or British. They didn't identify themselves with the country that they were in. They identified them by the empire they were part of and the country that they came from. So references in historical documents about New Zealanders, they're referring to Māori.
Yeah.
David, because he is not a history guy, does not know this.
Well, or he does. Again, sorry to be a clanging cymbal, or he does, and he's trying to twist it and hope enough people believe him. But this is very good, this part.
Us an English translation of a Maori text there, but of course we don't need the English translation of the Maori.
So you got that? So basically, English version first, Maori version written from the English version, and now David Seymour is giving you an English interpretation of the Maori version. But what we're about to hear is you don't need to interpret what the Maori version was, because the Maori version was written from the English one. So let's go see what the original English one said.
Text, because the Maori text was based on the original English text, right? So what does the English text of Article 2 of the treaty say?
Well, you've got it in front of you. Why don't you read it?
Well, I mean, so this comes to the heart of your argument,
that's
right?
not good.
So really we're looking to see whether or not the English text guaranteed all people in New Zealand, tino rangatiratanga, or just iwi and
you're going to
hapu.
read out that it says that they're going to protect the chieftainship of their lands.
I'll read it out, just because, I mean, you've given us an interpretation of the Maori text, but here's the English text upon which the Maori text was written. Her Majesty the Queen of England confirms and guarantees to the chiefs and tribes of New Zealand and to the respective families and individuals thereof the full, exclusive and undisturbed possessions of their lands, estates, forests, fisheries and other properties which they may collectively or individually possess, so long as it is their wish. That's tino rangatiratanga for Māori, a specific carve-out for Māori, not for...
And guess what? Old Seymour's only comeback is, yeah, but aren't we supposed to use the Māori version? Not the English version. We're supposed to use the Māori version, whereas Jack's just showing him, I know. So in other words, you've now got David Seymour fighting to use the Māori version, which means two things. First is, okay, so let's get some Māori language experts to tell us, oh, you don't have any? Oh, okay. Well, then let's find out how that was written from the English version. So it's a very, very nice bit. So now he'll explain it again, and then we'll move on.
That's tino rangatiratanga for Māori, a specific carve-out for Māori, not for all New Zealanders.
No, I understand that's what it says, but equally everyone tells you you've got to use the Maori text because that's what the signatories understood.
But interpreting the Maori...
That's a bit woke, don't you think, Chewie? Well, Seymour's a bit woke. Using the Maori version, what? It's a bit woke.
Maori text, when the Maori text is based on the English text, shows that clearly it's a carve-out for Māori, not for everyone. That's what the treaty says.
It's a very cute argument, Jack, but just remember...
it's actually an argument based on the treaty, right? And whether or not your principles actually reflect what's in the treaty. And you say that the principles are for all New Zealanders, and clearly the treaty says this is for Māori.
No, your cute argument is that we must listen to the Maori text because it's the Maori text that it was signed, it's the Maori text that was that the British were the proposers of it, therefore it should be the Maori interpretation that is used, and then as soon as convenient you say, oh no, actually no, we'll go back to the English text.
And your cute argument is that the legal scholars who've interpreted the Maori text as meaning one thing are wrong, even though the Maori text was based on an English text which very clearly shows that the carve-out was for Maori, not for all New Zealanders. Now,
boom. I mean, like, boom. I mean, like, boom, 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 boom. Go, Joe.
Again, just to really underline something, because Jack says there, not all New Zealanders. Again, when you're referring to documents from this time period, New Zealanders are exclusively Māori. So that's a really easy interpretation when it comes to this. That's who they were talking about.
Yeah, people who live in this country.
Yeah, and this is the thing. Like, David isn't a law guy. He's not a history guy. He thinks that this is a plus, and he thinks that is why everybody should have their say on a historical document that many will not have a grounding to understand. Like, just opening it up to everybody. Yes, sure, pure democracy. Call it that. Is it effective lawmaking? No, it's not. And we just really need to draw a point that David, earlier in this interview, where he is bricking it the entire time, comes down to the fact that he said we are the envy of the world for our race relations. Straight out of the gate, first couple of minutes, he destroys his own argument. It is spectacular.
Heidi, Mike, come back to me. Because this last bit is just kind of a bit of fun. It's just 60 seconds. And don't we love it when we see David Seymour get pissy? Let's have a look, eh?
Is this worth doing if treaty settlements have to be renegotiated?
Well, I don't believe that they will be. All law exists in the context, all contracts exist in the context of the wider laws of New Zealand.
But that is the advice from the officials.
What's interesting about so much of this interview is how easily people question the idea that a parliament elected by the majority of New Zealanders shouldn't be able to make law.
Who have a vested interest in the document being changed. Remember, with one of the signatories. It's like your boss doing it. The boss is doing it.
Laws that are consistent with
the argument I made was that you, as a Minister of the Crown, arguably should not be defining the treaty principles, given the Crown is one of the concerned parties in the treaty, and that actually the courts are a much more appropriate place to define those treaty principles because they are a neutral third-party arbiter. We're running out of time.
Except I'm not. Parliament is the democratically elected body of New Zealand, making the laws people need to live under.
And the executive is the representation of the Crown, as opposed to the courts.
Yeah, but
it's
the Parliament that would pass the treaty principles.
Do you reckon?
There you go. That's it. Little bit pissy. This is a new thing for David Seymour since leading up to the last election. And we've played it several times. And I know we played it several times because I can remember writing on some highlights every now and again, David Seymour getting pissy. They always get good views. So that's a good thing. So, yeah. Chewie, we're going to move on to Debbie shortly and we've got to do some super chats now. But you've got a chance. You want to respond to any of that?
Yeah, look, I just want to say, I watched this whole interview before we jumped on tonight. And sure, I was very close to having to go and buy a new TV. But the whole interview is well worth watching. A couple of my favorite bits of Jack bringing up just after that clip that you played, actually, that David admits that it means nothing if the iwi or the hapu have accepted a settlement. And the example that Jack makes is Kaitahu here in the South Island.
Having 90% control.
90% of control over the entire South Island. Can't do anything about that. So that brings into the point of how many iwi have settled their claims, right? Because there's not that many left. So this won't affect much either. It just seems like a hiding to nowhere. And when anyone points it out, he goes, "Oh yes, but we might be South Africa. We're not South Africa."
So something else he said.
As I watched this is the thought that my wife had, and it is absolutely spot on. David Seymour wants to complete colonization.
Yeah, nice. Well, not
he
nice,
wants to underline it. Nice. Full stop. Job done. Mission accomplished. That's what this reframing is. We want to shut that fucking door. Colonized.
Good call. I'm not saying good, obviously, but it makes sense. This is something else he said, which I tweeted about, which we didn't show then. David Seymour says the version of the treaty that's been interpreted by the courts, etc., is, quote, completely unworkable in a liberal democratic state, end quote. But that's what New Zealand is, and it is working in a liberal. So he says this will never work. This is like him in 1835 going, we could never do this, guys. It's not going to work. Fair enough. You can predict the future, but he's saying this is never going to work for something that's working. It's bizarre.
So earlier in that interview, his whole the thing that he was hanging his fucking hat on, that it was just going to unlock so much potential in this country, is that somebody wanting to do a subdivision or a real estate development, they have to reach out to tangata whenua to do a cultural report, and I guess see what's happened in the area, make sure that they're not fucking doing it on a battle site or
killing some native animals
or an urapa or that sort of thing. And I was just like, that's a good thing. It's a good thing. But apparently it's frustrating for developers. And this is why we have a housing problem, because Māori won't let us build subdivisions everywhere. It is that is the most honest thing he has said about this, that it is about property, which absolutely clicks in with everything to do with Atlas. It's everything to do with what they're doing. Whenever there's a colonized indigenous people trying to retain their rights over their land, there is Atlas trying to fuck it up.
Hey, welcome back, whānau. Looking forward to catching up with you on Monday as we go back to being live. Just a huge thanks to our patrons, who some of you have been a part of us since 2022, 2023. Crumbs, it's a couple of years now. Really appreciate you guys. The patrons are the people. Yes, we've got the store open and stuff, but the patrons are the people who help us do this thing on a monthly basis. When we're doing pre-records like we are right now, and obviously the super chats are down, and even though the store is open, it's obviously down because we're not here every night saying, hey, look at the store, hey, look at this. It's the patrons that help us get through this. So basically the patrons literally enable us to have some time off, which we desperately need. And also pay for a whole bunch of other things as well. I'm going to do some work up in Waitangi. Patrons are some of the people helping to pay and cover some of that work whilst I'm up there for Waitangi Day. If you like what we do, if you're a fan of it and you want to do something more than just share our content, then what you can do is head to patreon.com/Big Hearing News, as it says at the bottom of the screen, and just do what you can do. I mean, like, the most important thing is that we have your eyeballs and your earballs. Is that a thing? But other than that, you know, telling people about us, lots of ways you can be advocates. If one of those ways is also a small financial contribution per month, then patreon.com/Big Hearing News. If it's not going to jump up and down on you. Enjoy the content. Help support us some other way by sharing it around and telling people about us, being our advocates, buying some stickers, sticking them by Parliament, which I've been getting pictures from you guys, sticking those Nicky No Bites ones up by Parliaments. And just keeping on. So patreon.com/Big Hearing News if you want to be a part of that. Thank you for all those who are supporting us, and let's get back to the best ofs.
One of the Associate Health Minister's top officials has slammed the evidence Casey Costello used to justify giving heated tobacco products a tax cut. In internal emails seen by One News, the Ministry of Health expert described the minister's information as selective, out of date, and some of it crap. Here's senior political reporter Benedict Collins.
I mean, if it wasn't so serious, it would be hilarious.
These are the heated tobacco products the Prime Minister's hoping will help people.
We should probably bring to their attention again, Chewie, you know quite a bit about this. How many companies make these products?
Just one.
Oh.
It's failed in pretty much every market apart from Japan, where Japan have banned vapes instead.
So just one company gets this. Okay, just checking in.
Get off ciggies.
Well, we really want to be able to make sure that we're giving people as many options as possible to get away from cigarettes.
I'm sorry, I know this is not the thing, but that dude coming in, sliding in from the left of the screen was absolutely perfect. I'm going to watch it again. Just like, he needs a little kind of noise, one of them that's like, as he comes in. Ready?
Well, we really want to be able to make sure that we're giving people as many options as possible to get away from cigarette smoking.
The government cut taxes on the products after Casey Costello got independent advice that she says shows they'll help people quit.
There's no independent evidence that they help people to quit smoking.
It's a $200+ million tax cut to the country's biggest tobacco company.
Now One News has seen internal emails at the Ministry of Health. Their chief advisor, epidemiology, reviewed the minister's independent evidence, 5 documents in all, and told her colleagues,
it's not so much that all the studies are crap.
She thought one was okay, another good, but now well out of date.
It's more that it is a small number of selective research, not up to date, and certainly don't form any sort of robust evidence.
She pointed out some of the data cited in one study was provided by the tobacco company, Philip Morris.
It feels like a quick and dirty...
That feels like, you know, Big Petroleum doing their own research, Big Tobacco. That could never go wrong. You would expect Big Tobacco to put out some research, even if it was harmful to the product they were making, because they're just good citizens.
Google search.
Do you think the quality of the information she is bringing to Cabinet is up to scratch?
Yeah, I could tell you that minister is very, very focused on making sure she lowers daily smoking rates and delivers on smoke-free 2025.
Yeah, officials at the Ministry of Health, they also, when they're talking about this evidence that Casey Costello had, they're putting evidence inside inverted commas. I mean, they seem to think their minister's behaviour is a bit farcical.
Well, I just put it to you that I have conversations with the minister. I have through the course of the year. You've seen.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that he has conversations.
What I would put to you is...
I don't believe that he has conversations with the minister about this. My gut, and it's just my gut tells me that he doesn't do a lot of communicating with ministers from other parties. Would be where I'd place my money if I was going to do a polymarket bet. And so I doubt very much he spends a lot of time talking to Casey Costello. Remember, he didn't spend any time talking to her about her research, air quotes, research, because he hadn't seen it the last time this conversation came up. And even though he hadn't seen it, he was happy to stand by it because she was worthwhile and trustworthy.
In a Ministry of Health, frankly, that I think has not been straight up about conflicts of different officials that have been in that Minister's department, and they needed to have been.
Labor says it's just embarrassing.
Casey Costello is making the whole government look foolish. I think the fact that Christopher Luxon's not willing to do anything about that is an indictment on his leadership.
A short time ago, the Ministry of Health said its experts' critique was not the ministry's official position.
And you've just got...
Now, we watched this last night, this little bit at the end, but let's just watch the next 30 seconds because Casey Costello yesterday did reply in what I would describe as a very Trumpian way, which is, I'm blaming you. I'm blaming you.
A response from the minister, I understand, Benedict. What does it say?
That's right. We've been trying to get an interview all day long with Casey Costello without success, but then just a few minutes ago, we've got quite an extraordinary statement from her. Now, Casey Costello has said that she's gone and read these emails today, and when she looks at them, she sees it as another attempt by public servants at the Ministry of Health to try and undermine the government's efforts to reduce smoking in New Zealand. She said...
So let's get this right. The experts and the officials in the Ministry of Health are trying to undermine the government to get to smoke-free 2025. The same government that cancelled banning cigarettes that the same officials, I'm sure, would have been aghast at. So these same officials would, like the rest of the world, literally the world, would have been shocked that this government took away the banning of cigarettes. But now it's them who undermine that end goal of smoke-free 2025, not Casey Costello, not this government. Not Philip Morris with their tax breaks. It's the health professionals. It's the people within the Ministry of Health, Chewie. They're the ones to blame. Not Casey Costello, not Luxon, not ACT. Them. They're to blame.
Absolutely. Fundamentally doesn't understand what public servants are supposed to do. Here's a tip for Minister Costello. It's in the fucking name. They're servants to us, the public, not you. Not you. So if they want to call you on their bullshit, then that's in their purview. Like to lean on this crutch of political neutrality, yeah, they can be politically neutral, but they are there to call out bad ideas when their minister goes off gung-ho because that's what she is bought and paid for to do by Philip Morris, because she is a lobbyist first and a servant of the people second.
So let's have a little bit of a look. One News did a bit of it was Katie Bradford, I think, did a bit on the difference between, because we do have principles. This is one of the lies. There are principles. They've been around since 75, I think, and how those principles are being treated right now and what Seymour is trying to do. So let's have a look.
What does the bill actually propose? And crucially, what are some of the differences between it and the current treaty principles? Katie Bradford takes a look.
The concept of treaty principles was introduced in the Treaty of Waitangi Act 1975. Through the years, it has developed through various case law and pieces of legislation. Crucially, there are no principles that have been expressly defined or set out in law. That's what David Seymour says he is trying to do. Let's compare the current main three principles with the bill before Parliament. On partnership, the treaty created a relationship between Māori and the Crown, and both parties must act with the utmost good faith. The new Principle 1 states the government has full power to govern and Parliament has the full power to make laws in the best interests of everyone. The second...
So, like, it actually cuts out. Both parties must act with the utmost good faith. It's about Māori and Crown relationships. And he goes to straight, almost authoritarian. The government has full power to govern. Parliament has full power to make laws. Nothing at all about the relationship. So actually, in the first partnership change, he's cut Māori out of the principle whatsoever. Gone. Are we seeing it yet? Are we seeing it yet, people?
When we're doing the conversation with people that aren't getting it, that is one to hammer. And there is a reason why David Seymour would prefer to talk about Article 2. I think it's Article 2. It's
let's
definitely not Article 1. He doesn't want to talk about that one.
So here's the next one.
Best interests of everyone. The second current principle addresses participation. At present, the Crown is to provide tangata whenua with the opportunity to engage with the decision-making processes at all levels. Proposed Principle 2, the Crown recognises and respects and protects the rights hapu and iwi had when they signed Te Tiriti. Those rights differ from the rights everyone has, only when they are specified in legislation.
There you go. Chewie, you want to speak to it?
Bye-bye rights. Bye-bye special relationship. Like, just gone.
Opportunities to engage with decision-making process at all levels. Now, remember, people who don't get it, and look, I'll be honest, I don't get it as much as people we talk to, right? Can often be the dumbest people in the room. We're probably in the top 1,040 dumbest people in the room right now. You know, there might be a couple that are dumber, but, you know, maybe. Is that this is a contractual agreement between two parties, right? Crown, government, and Māori. That's it. So this is why when Chewie said before, this is not about race. This is not a treaty between two races. This is a treaty between the people who own the land, the people who were here. Think of a subdivision, right? The people who are there and the people who wanted to come in there. That's what it's about. Yes, the people who are here happen to be Māori, but that's like, I said this the other day, I've got neighbours who are Japanese New Zealanders. When they sign up with their mortgage, that's not an agreement based on race, because they happen to be Japanese and the person at the bank happens to be a Pākehā. It's just an agreement between two parties, right? So because this agreement between two parties includes Māori, then there's a contractual agreement for this principle to happen. Like, they're a part of the relationship. And just remember, it took until 1860 before Europeans outnumbered Māori. And up until then, it was running, you know, like Māori had the same, all these, and then once Europeans got the majority, then all of a sudden things started to change.
And look, this is one of the key things for me. I see no problem with Māori being involved in the decision-making process at all levels, because Māori exist in New Zealand society. So why shouldn't they be? This is the one that they get real tied up over, like, oh, it's anti-democratic to have like a seat on the council table, one seat on the council table. But look at what's happened to the natural resources of this country when we cut Māori out. We can't swim in our rivers. Our water table's fucked. We're strip mining forests. We're losing species. We've tried cutting Māori out and it's not working.
And remember this word at the beginning is really important. Opportunity to engage. Doesn't mean they get the casting vote. Doesn't mean they're going to be sitting at the big table. Doesn't mean they're in charge. It means when there are decisions made, we are going to talk to this group of people who are a part of the agreement to the founding document. It's an opportunity to engage. It actually doesn't even mean engage. Chewie, if I give you an opportunity to come out on Friday night to Wolf, doesn't mean you're going to come, but the opportunity is there. So even that is not that kind of Nazi-ish. It's not like they are. It's like there's an opportunity to engage. And that's going to, oh, where's my little thing going?
All and protects the rights hapu and iwi had when they signed Te Tiriti. Those rights differ from...
And the problem with that, the rights when they signed the treaty, is David Seymour thinks the treaty reads differently to what the experts think. So what David Seymour says, we're going to protect everything that was said when the treaty was signed, and what he says it was doesn't appear to be anything like what the experts say it said. And he still, remember, has not provided for us who are the people advising him, who are the experts, who are the historians, who are the academics, who are the people who can talk about the exegesis and the hermeneutics of language now versus language. He hasn't told us about any of that stuff. So as far as we know, this could all just be coming from David Seymour's headspace. Could be, because we don't know any different.
He's not an expert in the language. He's not got any qualification in history or law. He's an engineer, nominally an engineer. Yeah. So the people that are advising him and what they're telling him, that might be really important. We don't need to know, apparently.
And remember where it says there, rights differ only when they are specified in legislation. I can't remember the exact number. I was going to say 81, but it might be 18. If these principles were taken on board, there would be the reference to the treaty would be taken out of a huge number of legislation as it sits right now. So rights differ only when they are specified in legislation, whilst we remove aspects of the treaty from a whole bunch of legislation, so rights won't be specified. Number 2, let's have a look at number 3.
The rights everyone has only when they are specified in legislation, treaty settlements or other agreements with the Crown. Principle 3 addresses protection. The existing understanding is that the government prioritises the active protection of Māori interests, rights, taonga and rangatiratanga. The new proposed Principle 3 states everyone is equal before the law and entitled to equal protection and benefit.
So this is the exact thing that that we're being told. The experts are telling us. The experts are speaking out, saying this is about this part number 3 is about one of the signatories to that document, to that contract, and they do have certain rights because they signed the contract. Just like I have certain rights in my house because I signed a contract with my bank. You can't come onto my property and force your land rights onto me because I already have an agreement signed, sealed, and delivered. Stevie Wonder, and that changes from one of the original signatories has these things that they've signed up to everyone's the same. So that subdivision example basically says the subdivision is full bar one property, that last property is sold, and that person has as much right to change everything in all of those properties as the people who are already there and who have set up the community. That's one of the biggest problems. It's basically saying that when the treaty was signed, this is David Seymour, I'm paraphrasing, when the treaty was signed, it referenced all New Zealanders equally, and the counterpoint is, it referenced the signatories, the Crown and Māori, not all New Zealanders, not the dude who lands on the plane tomorrow morning and becomes a citizen in 12 months from now. Doesn't reference that person. Chewie.
I think the other thing that gets left out of this discussion of all New Zealanders, right, at the time that this treaty was signed, a New Zealander was a Māori.
Yeah.
That's how they were referred to. British colonists were referred to as British. So when he's talking about all New Zealanders, well, if you want to wind back to what it meant at the time of the signing of the treaty, then we're talking about Māori. That's an uncomfortable truth that he will not acknowledge.
Yeah.
I saw something today that I thought, like, we're talking about the people that we want to bring with us on this and understanding what the principles are. I found this gem in the most unlikely place, Pat.
Yeah.
In the stuff comment section.
Oh dear.
I know. It's like pulling a gold nugget out of a sewage settling pond. But I found it. And I've made it very, very small.
It's very, very small.
There we go. Contract law. Imagine you own some land. You lease out the land to some tenants with a contract that states you still own the land, but they get the right to sublet the land out. The tenants of that land, as well as the people they lease the land to, now decide that they want to vote on what that contract actually means.
Exactly.
I.e., did they really lease the land or did they mean to buy the land? You as the landowner have no vote in this matter, and that's pretty much what ACT want to do.
I think that's called a mic drop, isn't it? That's what the kids say.
It's a pretty concise sum up.
Hey, kia ora again. Welcome back, whānau. Thanks for watching the best of. Remember, live shows start again Monday the 13th. As another reminder as well, the merch store is currently open. Like I said earlier, we're probably going to have to take the store down after I head off on honeymoon, just because there'll be no one to service it. So get in there now if you want to get your especially your buffer merch before Waitangi Day. That is, of course, bhnshop.nz. But speaking of shop, speaking of merch, speaking of money, huge thanks to all of our patrons. In the last 7 days, a big thanks to George Terry, to Christian, to Rocket Rihari, to Mark White, to Joey Parr, and to Ruth O'Grady. Ruth O'Grady, top of the morning to you, who have all become patrons, and also Rebecca Hawkins We won't miss you out, Rebecca. Rebecca Hawkins also in the last 7 days. Also a big shout out to Rachel Hannon. Rachel Hannon's been a patron for a wee while, but upped their patronage, changed levels. 2025 is going to be a different year for patrons. We are going to service you guys better. I understand up until this point you've mostly just been wanting to support us with a few bucks here and there, but we are going to be looking at providing more content for patrons alone, because you guys are the guys who keep this thing going day to day. Merch is great, but the patrons are the guys who help us out day to day. Thanks for joining us again tonight. We will see you tomorrow night, unless this plays on Friday. Then you'll see a live show on Monday for another best of for the other ones. And stay safe. We'll see you super soon. Hooroo.
Settle a debate, whether it be thoughtful or funny, even if we're all creatures of hate. It's a fine line that we're walking together. For better, push aside the temptation to berate. Let's take